Mhm. Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV, and we're lifelong Catholics. And what we do is all for free, and for the love of Jesus Christ, and for Holy Mother, the Church. And we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Today we're going to be talking about World Youth Day coming up in a few weeks. And we have some explosive details to tell you. Welcome, Brother Alexis.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV, your unique Catholic apostolate where we investigate the deep state and the corruption in the Vatican, how these two things are, which is not because we hate the church, but because we love the church and we think the most important thing is for you Catholics to understand the level of corruption in the church, who truly to. Now, World Youth Days have been acclaimed ever since 1985 when John Paul II started them. They're kind of inspired by the Light movement in Poland, which was a movement started by a priest with a reputation for holiness who did retreats on Palm Sunday with altar boys. And it spread to the whole world in the age when pedophilia was running rampant in the church. So maybe the entire motivation of taking altar boys into the countryside wasn't of God. But John Paul II began it, and we're going to see the fruit of it. But we'll start with an interesting story in Catholic news that made AJ open his eyes and go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, so this is from Catholic News Agency's tweet. A few days before being released after 6 years in jail for drug trafficking. Let's get the name here. Get his full name here. Pedro Silva is putting the finishing touches on 50 confessionals that, together with 4 other prisoners, he built for World Youth Day, which will take place in Lisbon on August 1st and finish on August 6th.
As soon as you said August 1st, I lost your video and audio.
So, World Youth Day will be going on from August 1st to August 6th. And, yeah.
Now, there's an interesting backstory about this prisoner who makes these confessionals. We'll talk about his backstory first, and then we'll talk about the confessionals. Who is this guy? What kind of crime was he arrested for?
Yeah, so he was, well, for all we know, probably born in Brazil, baptized at the age of 12 in Belém, Brazil, at the Geronimo's Monastery. Then he goes and lives with his sister and her family in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Oh, yeah. And does he know anyone we know down there?
He starts to attend mass that is being said by Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio.
Oh, small world. 1 degree of separation. So, and then how does he end up in prison after going mass with Bergoglio?
So then he moves in with another sister who's living in Alicante, Spain. There he decides to pray. And then he's like, God help me, give me a sign. Then a magazine on his sister's table falls onto the floor. It was the Jehovah's Witnesses magazine.
Oh, so these people aren't good Catholics at all. That you would have that magazine, mean you paid for it. He thinks this is a sign of God.
Yeah.
So this guy's involved in totally false religion. He goes on to Vigo, becomes a waiter, and then he gets involved in what?
And then he gets into the drug trafficking trade there.
Yeah, now, if you don't know, Vigo is one of the largest ports on the west coast of Spain. It's long been the center for the exportation of very rare minerals that are found only in that part of the Iberian Peninsula. And it saw a lot of commercial traffic with the Nazi state during the Second World War, even though Spain was neutral. And to this day, you can find German, Bavarian-style chalets in the environs of Nazis settled around Vigo. So if he got involved in the drug trade in Vigo, when he is that how he gets in prison?
Yeah, so he then travels across into Portugal, bringing the drugs down into Porta, which then goes into Coimbra. And there he is arrested and sentenced for 6 years at the Coimbra prisons.
Okay, so it's hard to get put in jail in Portugal for distributing drugs. Why is it hard? Because in 2001, Portugal legalized drug use. That is, if you're using marijuana, cocaine, hashish, LSD personally and have less than 11-day supply, you cannot be arrested. Only if you have more than 11 days supply would you be arrested for drug trafficking. So this guy must have been moving a big quantity with his 4 friends. So Portugal, since 2001, is the dream world. This is the Disney world of drug cartels, because their clients, everyone in the country is a potential client. And this is the first question. Why on earth would anyone have a World Youth Day in a country where all the young people could buy drugs and it's not a crime? We'll get to that. So he was probably working for some cartel out of Galicia, correct?
Yeah, the Galician clan.
Yeah, and where did Galician clan get its drugs? Let's follow that rabbit.
Colombia.
Colombia. Can we name any cartel in particular that's known to export to Galicia?
The cartel ran by Pablo Escobar.
Now, he's a very infamous name. He wouldn't have to have any connections with the CIA or the Vatican, would he?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, first with the CIA.
Okay, I'm going to read this, but they only focus on the East Coast. But then on Wikipedia, from the CIA itself, they published their own map.
Okay, go ahead.
So, the
What book are you
CIA.
reading from?
Okay, Operation Gladio.
By Paul Williams. This is a must-have book if you're a Catholic. You want to know how corrupt the Vatican is.
The CIA was an active participant in the arrangement since the agency was deeply involved with Escobar and the drug cartels. As soon as the laundries were created, the CIA set up Air America North America, a fleet of Seneca cargo planes that operated out of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport in Avoca, Pennsylvania. The planes made regular 3,000-mile runs to Colombia to pick up the bundles of cocaine that were distributed to dealers throughout the East Coast. Frederick Reek Lutz, the head of the outfit, and his fellow pilots, made up to $1.5 million per run. Lutz, by his own admission, was a CIA operative, and the funds were used to sponsor black operations in South and Central America. A substantial amount of this cash was funneled into the IOR's offshore shells. We'll get into that.
IOR, you mean the Vatican Bank?
Yeah. We'll get into that later, unless you want to get into it now.
We'll get into it later because this is going to cut out because people really don't know that. So this guy not only knows Bergoglio, but he might know people in a criminal drug exporting gang that actually has bank accounts in the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
And he just happens to be discovered making confessionals for Youth Day.
Mm-hmm.
These confessionals are strangely designed. There doesn't seem to be any place to put bugging equipment in them, but they all have holes in them.
Yeah.
And if you're confessing to the priest, anyone on the other side of the wall could hear your confession.
Mhm.
Anyone with an auditory device, and this is common technology, from across the street on top of the other building could listen to your conversation. And why would the CIA perhaps have interest in listening to confessions, AJ, of young people at World Youth Day?
So that they can blackmail them later on after they get a sample of their product.
Now, is the World Youth Day used as a platform for launching CIA operatives to infiltrate the Catholic Church?
Yes.
And if you look at the backgrounds of so many of these talking heads on YouTube, oh, I decided to start an apostolate when I was at World Youth Day. They'll say it. Not all of them, but it's said a bit too frequently, as if being at World Youth Day was like being at Pentecost and the Holy Spirit came down and now you're an appointed missionary and you're going to teach people the faith. You know, listen to me, not to anyone else. You'll never see AJ and I make claims like that. We're cradle Catholics. That doesn't mean we're, appointed to do anything, but beware of people who appeal to World Youth Day. So, especially since the movement has this dark. John Paul II started World Youth Days. Did he have any connection with the CIA?
It is very likely and probable that he was recruited when he was a cardinal archbishop of Krakow when he made a trip to the United States, and then a secret trip to a very tiny town in Montana where no one knew he was coming.
Yeah, and he disappeared for like 3 weeks. Not to mention the fact that in the cables that were released, I think it was in the WikiLeaks, or maybe it was Freedom of Information, the cable from the American ambassador in Rome to the State Department the day after John Paul II was elected is, we finally got our man.
Mm-hmm.
And during his pontificate, how does he cooperate with the CIA, with IOBAR and the bank?
Yeah, he does what they want him to do.
Which was, what was the big operation in Europe under his pontificate?
Gladio, kidnappings, murders.
Taking down what government?
And there is one famous case that they claim they have no idea about what happened to.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, before you mention that, I just want to point out that they probably recruited John Paul II with the promise that if they allowed them to promote him to the Supreme Pontificate, they would fund the takedown of the communist government in Poland, and he, as Pope, would be able to use his influence. And matter of fact, the CIA, through bank accounts in Panama and the Vatican Bank, sent millions of dollars. The Solidarity movement was nothing until Polish monsignors carrying black suitcases from the Vatican and flying to Poland brought suitcases full of US dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that Solidarity took off, and that's how they brought the government down. It wasn't a miracle, and it wasn't John Paul II. It was CIA money, and that CIA money comes from what, AJ?
Drugs.
Drug running. Comes from drug running. So now continue what you're reading there in the Gladio book about the CIA's drug running and Escobar. They set up shell companies in the Vatican. What did they do? What was the Vatican actually doing with this money, or what was being done with this money?
Yeah, so hold on to your hands, folks.
And if he mentions the year, mention the year so we can see under what pontificate this began.
Yeah. 1978.
78. So that's just as Paul VI dies and John Paul II is elected. Okay.
Almost overnight, the 8 phony firms became multi-million-dollar businesses that had been established without capital expenditure. It was a mind-boggling accomplishment. The Ponzi scam served a threefold purpose. The first was to provide a new source of arms revenue for Gladiator involved in the strategy of tension in right-wing regimes, even the regimes at war with America's closest allies. Bellatrix, for example, used $200 million of its assets to purchase French-made Exocet AM-39 missiles for Argentina's military junta in a struggle with England over the Falkland Islands. Other offshore companies engaged in obtaining Libyan arms supplies for the Argentine troops, and for the Nicaragua Anastasio Somoza Debayle, whose regime was threatened by left-wing Sandinista National Liberation Front. Since the Vatican owned the companies, the Holy Mother Church was becoming a principal source of murder and violence throughout Italy and Latin America. Licio Gelli, the pivotal figure in the plan, along with fellow P2 members Umberto Ortolani, who had received the title Gentleman of His Holiness from Pope Paul VI, and Bruno Tassendin, the managing director of the huge Rizzoli publishing firm. Gelli had created many of the offshore corporations, including Bellatrix. He was also charged with overseeing the distribution of arms in Italy and South America through P2, which had established lodges in Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Gelli was the perfect man for the job. He retained dual citizenship in Italy and Argentina, and was well known and respected by the leading Latino strongmen, including Argentina's Jorge Videla, Chile's Agustino Pinochet, Bolivia's Hugo Benzo Suarez, and Paraguay's General Alfredo Stroessner.
Okay, now this is very interesting. You mentioned the publishing house Rizzoli and how it was run by this P2 member who's doing all this drug money laundering and arms push sales through Vatican banks. Very, very interesting thing. Rizzoli to this day publishes all the Bergoglian books, all the books that praise Pope Francis. They're all by Rizzoli, and they have a tiny little town in northern Italy where the books are published. People were surprised to find that Don Minutella last year went racing up to that town and bought a gym to turn into a chapel that wasn't even viable because full of asbestos. And people like, what are you doing buying a gymnasium in that town? That's like Bergoglio Central. So this is a very important fact for any of you who might have sucked up propaganda by Don Minutella, and to ask, what's he doing with the Rizzoli Investment House? Why would he have anything to do with a P2 lodge member or even want to be associated with them? You know, and that was right before Pope Benedict died. So John Paul then becomes Pope, and immediately this huge drug trafficking, money laundering, arms pushing. If you're from the United Kingdom, you should take note, because that drug money went into a Vatican bank to purchase missiles used by Argentina to kill citizens of the United Kingdom in the Falkland Islands. You should be outraged. And Americans should be outraged because that money was made selling drugs to our children in the United States. And if you're a member of the cleric, or you believe you should be outraged that the Vatican's even having anything to do with this. But you know, AJ, I get the impression if all this criminal activity went full blown in 1978 when John Paul gets into office, maybe it's not a coincidence that we have an Argentine on the papal throne right now. Since wasn't Bergoglio a friend of a leading P2 member in Argentina?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's basically P2 Argentina, Bergoglio. So, there's just too many things connecting here. So, is it possible, AJ, that World Youth Days is a CIA operation to get 1 million youth in one town where they'd be clients for drug sales?
Yeah.
Especially that in Portugal, where drugs are legal.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen to 1 million young people if they're in a country where they can be cocaine, hashish, marijuana, quaaludes, speed, anything, and it's not a crime during Youth Day?
a lot of kids will be damaged for life. Sometimes, if the certain drugs kick in, and they could possibly even kill and rape other kids.
Yeah, young girls could be given something in their drink, and the next thing you know, they're raped. You know, Pope Benedict didn't want to go to Youth Day in 2013, and many believe he was forced to resign. Now, this might help us explain another moment why the CIA wanted him out. Because if the Pope doesn't go, the youth aren't going to show, and you won't sell drugs. Now, let's see, 1 million young people, they're not all buying drugs, but even if 50,000 did, and they spent $100, that's already $5 million in sales. It's not a small amount. And some might even spend more. Then you have adults that go and everything like that. So I imagine that World Youth Day in Portugal this year is going to be a big moneymaker for drug cartels who work with the CIA. And Bergoglio's in bad health, but he insists on going. And he might have a financial motive in going. He might have been promised a cut. And don't feel outraged that I'm implying this level of corruption. It's already printed in a book. You show them the book title again, Paul Williams Gladio. This book has been out almost 10 years now, never been refuted. And he's a good Catholic. He's an investigative journalist, professional journalist who's even had his head beaten in by the Italian mafia. So he just doesn't write things carelessly. He doesn't have an axe to grind. This corroborates what Wemhoff said. What does Wemhoff say in his book, Time, Life, and the American Proposition, about CIA infiltration and control of the Vatican that jives with this?
Yeah, they control the media. They control how everything is portrayed, and they controlled how the documents would be printed, how they would be, how you would read them. I mean, it's just to destroy the faith of the faithful.
Years ago, I think it was 2010, I was hitchhiking and a guy gave me a ride, and he looked like a Sicilian mafia. He had like dressed in it. And he said, I said, do you know anything about the Vatican? He was telling me about all this stuff he knows going on in Italy. He goes, I do, but you probably lose your faith if you tell me. And he said, we control everything in the Vatican. I said, everything? He goes, you don't want to know how much you'll lose your faith. I said, no, I'm not going to lose my faith. What you say to me doesn't surprise me. That was in 2011. Now I actually know some of it. So continue, AJ. Excuse me for my interruption there.
There is one program we haven't done from Wim Hof where we found out that we know that Courtney Murray, Henry Booth, and his wife were doing LSD, but it goes on from there that I think they got it into the synod halls.
You mean they were involved in drug pushing in Washington?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they might be involved in drug pushing in the Vatican?
Yeah.
I mean, it came out, I think it was 2 years ago, these wealthy donors in Colorado spent $20 million to buy marketing data from the area around the Vatican, and they found, I think, 60 individuals in the Vatican who use the Grindr app, which is a homosexual hookup app. So those individuals are known to take lots of drugs because what they do is very painful to one another. And this might explain why the Vatican for a long time doesn't have people that seem rational or even responsive to the needs of the faithful, because they're getting their main financial support from some other source, and it's not your Peter's Pence collection, and that they've sold themselves to that power.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about Satan himself. I'm talking about organizations like drug cartels. And you cannot say, oh, we're going to open an account for the CIA and let them drug money and things and not ask questions and be guiltless. That just doesn't happen. That's guilt. That's guilt. And
yeah, and you know the CIA is a bunch of liars and crooks and thieves, murderers, blah blah blah. They say they shut down their desk in the Vatican in the 80s. I don't believe it.
If an Argentine ends up on the papal throne, you can bet that's not the case. You know, he said when he did his interview, his accounting for all the Roman Curia to find out all this money that wasn't being reported, that they found 600 million euro. Now, the story is that all these clerics were crooked and they were hiding money away. But maybe he was paid 600 million euro for doing something for globalists. And the accounting thing was just a fancy cover for it. Because when you get to this level of corruption, nothing out of these people's mouths can bleed. Does that mean that Pope Francis is not our Pope? No. A Pope can be totally and absolutely morally corrupt. There was a Pope in the Middle Ages. If you attended his parties, he would offer you a female or male prostitute at the door.
Yeah.
And they had new boys all painted up. 3 boys died because they were painted, had their entire bodies painted, and you will die of asphyxiation if there's paint on your skin, your entire body. And that was under the Medicis. So Vatican has known corruption, and we never follow a pope in what he is corrupt. But if you know a cleric that's praising, he's not a trustworthy man, or he doesn't know what's going on. And if you know a cleric who, if you showed this program to him, he would become violently upset, then he's not honest either, because any priest who hears confessions knows how corrupt the world is. He knows it a lot more than you, I, or AJ. And if he doesn't think there's corruption in the Vatican, he's a crook. He's trying to hide it. That's pretty obvious, because everyone else will say, even St. Alphonsus says, he said in the 18th century, Rome's so corrupt that unless God gives you the promise of success, don't even go there. So, but this is a warning now to everyone who has a friend going to World Youth Day, or a parent whose child is going to go to Youth Day. Tell them not to go. This is a grave moral danger to everyone, adults and children. No one should be attending this event, not in a country like Portugal where buying drugs is legal. Where anyone legally could buy any of these drugs and put them in the drink of your daughter or your son. This is not Catholic. This is not a youth day. This is a world satanic orgy. That's what this is. This is predation of young people on an international scale. You're talking about sex trafficking. This is sex trafficking. There's going to be every pedophile and rapist there just waiting for these children. And they can get all the things they need to take them. These once you drug them up, you can stuff them in a cart, do anything to them. So, and I'm not talking about them being attacked by Muslims, I'm being attacked by crooks who are Christians. This is horrible. I mean, I'm not even a parent, and I'm getting sick just thinking about this World Youth Day. But to think this might have been going on for a very long time, and no one ever covered it. Because this journalist who praised this guy for making confessionals, she works for a magazine called Seven Margins, which is run by apparently a foreigner. And they're all pro-Bergoglians. They're all Mafia St. Gallen. So why would she be like so delighted about a news story of a drug pusher making confessionals? Is this perhaps lapsus linguae, where she's letting out the whole game plan subconsciously?
Yeah. Yes. Hold on, folks. Yeah, here we go. We're back.
What was the last thing you heard me say, Jay?
If you thought it was there, the writer was letting out things out of the bag, but without saying exactly, and I said, yeah.
Yeah.
So on the show page, you'll find even more about this, because I post on the show page the man who started it all for the CIA, who helped Disney purchase that property. Paul E. Helliwell. So read the stuff on the show page. I also linked the Gladio book there. You can get it on Barnes and Noble. And please do get it, and please, gift it for friends, family, so they also have a copy. Any last words?
AJ, I'm thankful you decided to do this program. I never thought we'd draw these connections in, and it's going to help a lot of people raise issues about World Youth Day. There are a topic that the tradies have never talked about. They always complain about how people dress and stuff, and how stations of the cross or how altars are designed, but no one's ever covered the drug trafficking connection. And this is for investigative journalists. They should now start taking a careful look at this and re-examining the whole history of World Youth Days and what is going on.
This is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Day is full.
Day is full.